Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ginger Fay, and I'm the Global Director of Partnerships at Appleruth Education. We're a tutoring and test prep company, and we love working with students as they journey their way through their education. It is a privilege to be able to do this work, and we're thrilled to be able to share good ideas and information with you. And we're very lucky because we have a lot of wonderful colleagues who are willing to share their time and their experience with us. And I've got three of the best with us tonight. So I hope you'll enjoy the conversation we'll have over the next hour. We are going to try and cram a lot of information into a very short period of time. So if you have any specific questions, please feel free to put those in the Q&A box, and we'll be glad to cover as many topics as we can tonight. And you will, we are recording this session, and you will receive a link to the recording after we have wrapped up, hopefully probably before the end of this week. So you'll be able to reference some of the things that our speakers are going to talk about. And if you would find it easier to use or helpful to use closed captioning, we do have that enabled. And there is actually translation services now available on Zoom. So if it's easier for you to read in a different language, you can. And I'm just amazed and grateful for technology helping make things more accessible for people all around the world. So welcome, and thank you for joining us. As I mentioned, Appleruth is a company that works with students at lots of different stages in their educational journey. And we are really driven by a fundamental belief that when you change students' self-beliefs, you can change their lives. And that is kind of the driver for all of the work that we do. We work with students in three different ways. We do academic tutoring for students from elementary school through college. We do help students with high stakes standardized test preparation when they're making transitions in school. So anything from the SSAT, the SHSAT if you're in New York, to the SAT and ACT and the GRE if you're on to graduate school. And we also work with students on executive function coaching, which is really helping students put together the skills that they need to be successful in school and beyond. So if we can be of help to you, I hope you'll invite us to be part of your journey. Tonight, we're going to talk specifically about the journey to college and how incredibly expensive it can be. And we've got some great panelists, some experts to share with you some ways to help make college a bit more affordable. I've worked in this field for over 25 years. I've worked in college admissions, college counseling, alumni relations. I worked on the high school side, boarding schools, and college, and I believe there's a path for every student. And I'm joined by three amazing colleagues who come with different perspectives on this and will share a little bit of their insights with you tonight. So first, we'll hear from Jason Brown, who's the author of Margin Matters, and It Is Possible. He managed to earn 2 debt-free degrees, and he will teach you how to do it as well. Next will be Chanell Thomas, who's the Associate Director for Student Financial Aid and Scholarships at Vanderbilt University. She's a Commodore twice over and has some fantastic experience to share from the school side to kind of lift the shroud of mystery that seems to veil the financial aid awarding process. And finally, we'll hear from Will Geiger, who co-founded a great website called Scholarships 360, which enables students who are interested in looking for outside scholarships to help fund their education for the money and the students to find each other. It's like a little matchmaking process that can be enormously helpful. So I'm grateful to the three of you for joining us tonight and eager to hear all that you have to say. I do want to pause really briefly and invite a moment for us to hear from the audience so we know who they are. We'd love to, we're going to launch a quick poll so that you can tell us if you're a student or a parent or an educator in support of students and where the student that you're thinking about tonight is in the journey, recognizing that families often have students who are different ages and stages all at the same time. So if you can answer those questions and then we will begin answering your questions since that's the deal for tonight. So thank you so much to Jason, Chanell, and Will for joining us tonight. Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you to get things started, and we'll look forward to the questions that will come in through the Q&A box and answers when we wrap up at the end.
All right, thanks so much. I really appreciate being a part of the panel and sharing some more of my life experiences that I've learned on the path of earning not one, but two debt-free degrees. So hopefully you guys can gain some tips and knowledge from what I have to say tonight. So first, I want to share the first thing when you're budgeting for college is that you need to be aware of the tremendous cost differences between private and public school, and specifically out of state and in state. So you can see here on the slide, private, this is an average cost per year, just under 40 grand. And then when you look at public, you're going to see a tremendous cost savings if you go to a public university. Out of state, you're looking at about 28 grand a year. In state, this is where you're going to save the most money. And I'm going to talk about this in just a few minutes as well. We're going to hit on this some more, but just a little over $10,000 per year for an in-state public school. So you can see the differences in cost there. So we'll go to the next slide, Ginger. So here, these are the costs that everybody knows about. These are the standard costs of college that when you're putting together a budget, everybody knows: tuition and fees, housing and meals, books and supplies, and then you have your personal and your transportation costs. So when you break those down, or actually when you combine all those costs together, you're looking at about $25,000 a year. Now, this is based on in-state public school cost. And then when you, if you're fortunate enough to graduate in 4 years, which we'll talk about in a minute as well, you're looking at a little over 100 grand. So you can see, you can get an idea of how much the cost of college is going to be. Now, this is just for the standard cost. And when we look at the next slide, this is what I like to tell everybody about, is the hit. These are just some of the hidden costs of college that you're going to incur. Now, the first one here, this is before you even go to college. This is the application fees that you're going to have to pay for the privilege of applying to the school of your choice. Now, on average, you're going to charge you between $50 and $100. And that might not seem like much, but if you don't know where you want to go and you're casting a wide net and you want to apply for a couple dozen colleges, you can see how this can add up really, really quickly. Now, once you're in school, you're going to have, clubs and organization fees, and this is going to be like your fraternities and your sororities, any type of club, sports, intramural sports, really any extracurricular activities that you want to be involved in. There's going to be a cost associated with that, and then this is just an average cost that I have here, $2,500 a year on average, depending on what you want to do. Now, if you're going to live in an apartment on campus or off campus or in a dorm, perhaps, you're probably going to want to have furniture. You might want a bed to sleep on. So you're going to have some costs for that. So there's going to be, a range of costs there depending on how much you need. So next you talk about traveling. So if you are going to go to school away from home, and I'm assuming you're going to want to come home and visit your parents and your friends and all your high school buddies a couple times a year over the holidays, et cetera. So there's going to be a cost to that. And in case anyone hasn't checked, the cost of flying these days has increased tremendously. So that's something you need to take into account. Now, the next thing, this could really be a big cost if you end up doing it. A lot of students really want to study abroad. It's a tremendous opportunity to become more cultured and maybe learn another language and just get a valuable educational experience. Now, this you can see the range of this is anywhere between $3,000 and $20,000, depending on where you're going and where you're living and how long you're going to stay. So if you have a student that wants to be involved in that, there's going to be cost for that. Now, the last one I have on this list is going to be really only applies if the student is uninsured, and we're talking about health insurance here and medical costs. So if the student does not still fall under the parent's health insurance plan, they're probably going to have some out of cost medical costs. So I just budget $1,000 a year for that. So these are some of the hidden costs. Now, moving on. Now, these are some pro tips I want to share with you guys. Now, you guys might not know that the majority of college students do not graduate in 4 years or less. Actually, 64% of college students take longer than 4 years to graduate. And you can look at myself as an example. It took me nearly 6 years to get my 4-year bachelor's degree when I went to Kennesaw State University. So 2 tips here. The first tip is this is a mistake that I see people make when they're budgeting, they're projecting the costs over the course of a college career. They'll take the expenses from the first year. They'll have that budget from all the costs that we just talked about. They'll have that budget for the first year, and then they'll just multiply it by 4. And here's why it's a mistake. There's a thing called inflation that we're all well aware of these days. So each year, the expenses are going to go up based on inflation and a variety of other reasons Costs just go up every year. So cost in year 4 is going to be dramatically different from in year 1, or if you go 5 or 6 years. So that's something that you need to take into account when you're planning ahead for your budget. The second thing is, like I just said, don't assume that you're going to finish college in 4 years. I didn't. A lot of people, the majority of college students don't. So that's something that you want to take into account when you're budgeting your expenses. Is don't automatically assume you're going to finish college in 4 years. So those are a couple tips. So moving on, now we're going to talk about how to save money on college. So the first slide is going to be before you enter college. These are some things that you can do to save money before you even get there. So the first thing, of course, is work. You pick up a part-time job as a teenager. This is a tremendous opportunity to start saving money, because why? When you're a teenager, you're most likely living at home, and you probably don't have any expenses, little to no expenses. Your parents are paying for most of your expenses at that time. So this is an opportunity where you can really save up a lot of money very quickly. So take advantage of that. Now, the next thing is, this was brought to my attention, taking AP classes while you're in high school. I didn't have the opportunity to do this. I wasn't aware of the benefits of this, but apparently if you take AP classes in high school, those credits can count towards college, and it will allow you to bypass or skip certain introductory college classes. So what does that mean? That means you're saving money because you don't have to take those classes in college. Now, the next one, this is big. This is the dual enrollment program. Now, I'm in Georgia, and the dual enrollment program is a little bit different in each state. So depending on what state you live in, you can just Google dual enrollment in the state that you live in. You'll find all the information. But basically how it works is, here in Georgia, you can basically, as a high school student, you can enroll in college classes at a local public university, and you can go ahead and start earning college credit while you're in high school. And here, how I found out about this, I was sitting in grad school next to a 17-year-old kid, and I said, "What?" I turned to him, I said, "How are you here?" And he starts telling me about this dual enrollment program and how he's in high school, and he actually graduated a semester early. So he planned ahead a little bit, graduated a semester early. So his last semester in high school, he was actually going to college and taking college courses. So what happened with him was, he was going to start college in the fall as a sophomore. So he was going to knock out his first year of college while he was in high school. So this is a tremendous opportunity to save time and money. So now he has the opportunity to graduate college in 3 years instead of 4. He shaved off a year of time and money. And guess what? That's all paid for by the state. So that's a tremendous thing. Research that. So the next thing we're talking about, entering. Now once you're entering a college, I talked about this a second ago. If you just don't listen to anything else I say tonight, all my tips, the one thing, if you listen to one thing, the one decision that you can make to save you the most money is stay in state and go to a public school. You can potentially save over $10,000 a year. And when you project that over, 4, 5, 6 years, you're looking at $50,000 potentially. So this is the decision you really, really want to consider when you want to keep the cost down. So let's move on to the next one. Now, during college. So these are some ways that you can save money while in college. Now, during college, this is big. Now, there's a big movement going on with employers that they're offering tuition reimbursement programs. I know that the company that I work for now, I use this, and they paid for my master's program. So basically, you just you go to your job, go to your HR department, and ask them, "Hey, do you have a tuition reimbursement program?" And a lot of them are doing this these days. So this is an opportunity for you to look for, especially if you're looking for a new job. Make sure you look for a job that offers tuition reimbursement, because that's a huge help. Now, the next thing, if feasible, if you're going to stay local and go to college, live at home, because living at home, you're going to save so much on living costs, because 9 times out of 10, the cost of living is going to outpace your cost of school, like your tuition costs. Living expenses are usually higher than tuition and fees. So if you can live at home, that'll save you a ton of money. Now, this next one should probably have its own slide, but it's ditch your car. And this is kind of a concept that this would really work if you are living on campus, like an on-campus dorm or apartment. Do you really need a car? And most people don't realize how much it costs to own a car. And here you can see, this is every year the AAA comes out with a statistic, And here you can see how much it costs to own a car. Over $10,000 to own a new car in 2022, almost $900 a month. So if you don't have a car for 4 years of college, just think of the savings, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 right there. So that is something to really, really consider. Do you really need a car, or can you get around on a bicycle or a skateboard or a scooter or bum rides? So now during college, a couple other things to save money: maximize campus amenities. What does that mean? That means you don't need to pay for a LA Fitness gym membership when you have a beautiful gym available to you on campus that is for students only. So of course you're already paying for that in your student fees, but there's a lot of amenities available to you on campus. Campuses are going to host concerts, they're going to host guest speakers. They have all type of amenities that you could take advantage of and not pay for, because you've already paid for it. So cut the cord. Do you really need cable in your dorm or apartment? How often are you actually going to be there? If you cut the cable, you can easily save over $1,000 a year. Student discounts. I am not embarrassed or ashamed to admit that I used my student discount for about a decade after I graduated college. Keep that student ID card on you, and everywhere you go, just ask, hey, do you guys offer a student discount? You might be surprised at how many places will give you a student discount. So that's another opportunity to save money. So next, we're going to talk about a few other things. This is really, really important that people don't realize, is just learn how to cook simple meals. Get a crock pot, get some, crock pot recipe book, learn how to cook. Every time you go out to eat, you're probably spending $10, $15, and that adds up really, really quickly. If you can learn how to cook simple meals, a big pot of spaghetti, eat some leftovers, save you a lot of money. Campus. Okay, so this next one I love. What's the number one way to get starving college students to come to your campus event? That's right, folks. Offer free food. There is so much free food on campus that you don't even realize. So take advantage of these opportunities to just get out, meet new friends, go to some campus events, get your free food. Now, it's not really free because you've already paid for it with your student fees. So take advantage of it, because we all see the rising cost of food. We've all been in the grocery stores, and food is one of the top 3 expenses that you're going to have in life. So anytime you can get a free meal, take advantage of it. So the next thing we touched on a little bit a second ago is earn your degree in 4 years or less. If you can earn your degree in 4 years or less, you are going to save tens of thousands of dollars. And don't be like me and stay in school for 6 years. Cut off the time. So how do you do that? You plan ahead, you create a timeline, you meet with your student advisors, make sure you're on pace to graduate in 4 years or less, and you will save thousands of dollars just by doing that. All right, what do we have next? This is my last slide. This is the best advice / biggest regret for me is this is when you enter college. When you step on campus, the first thing that you should do is go find your college scholarship office and become best friends with your scholarship staff members and scholarship officers. Those staff members are there to help you. Their job is to ensure your success. Their job is to help you secure scholarships, and they're going to help you apply for scholarships. And another thing is, you can apply for scholarships every year. I applied for scholarships and didn't get them. And then the next year I applied for them again and I got them. So never give up on applying. Of course, don't apply if you're a graduating senior, but when you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, keep applying every year and go to that scholarship office and make meetings, get to know those people, because they are there to help you. This advice is something that I regret, because I ended up working 3 jobs when I was in school to pay for 3 jobs at the same time. So if I could have gotten more scholarships, I wouldn't have been burned out from working all those jobs, and my GPA wouldn't have suffered. So this is something that's my biggest advice and takeaway. So that's what I have. And next we have Chanell that's going to take over and give some more wise counsel to us.
Thank you.
Who is one of those people that should be your best friend. So it's very, very appropriate.
Thank you for the plug, Jason.
Absolutely.
I always say that financial aid officers always make sure you know who they are, and they will always be able to help you. So thank you for that, Jason. So next slide. We're going to talk about applying for financial aid and talk about probably some things you've already heard, but just kind of give some tips. as you're going through the process. But as Jason was thinking, this is really a partnership when you're thinking about paying for college. And so it's between the college, your jobs, and then your parents, your family. We're all working together trying to make this possible. So what first is financial aid? You hear that terminology. What are we talking about? So it's money given or loaned to a student and or their family to help them pay for college education. And so the money that you're probably most familiar hearing about is gift aid. So that's your grant and scholarships. That's the free money that everyone loves to receive. And then also we have self-help money. So this is where you have to earn or do something or repay that money back. So that means the self-help. There's some skin in the game as part of that process. So this is your loans where you have to repay back, and then you have your work study. And so types of financial aid, we have need-based financial aid, which we'll talk about in just a moment, but that's where we're looking at income and assets. Then you have your merit-based scholarships. So that's your academics. It can be based on your GPA, your performance in the classroom. You have the community engagement scholarships. So if you've done community service, talent-based scholarships, if you play an instrument, we may have the School of Music and we're looking for a trombone player. They may have opportunity for a scholarship. But then athletics, so this is looking at your talent. And so there may be several talent-based scholarships that are out there available to you as you're applying. But then also there's on-campus employment. And so this is where Jason talked about a little bit, student work expectation. That is typically from the student working during the summer. And so that is where saying, hey, you get a job during the summer and you save up to use that towards your college expenses for that upcoming academic year. And then work study is where you get a job while you are enrolled in campus to help pay for those current expenses. And so those are the types of financial aid that you will see that they fit into those particular categories. So next slide. And so the analysis that we do to review your eligibility for financial aid is called need analysis. So this is what we do behind the table once you go through all the applications. So I wanted to share with everyone the principles of need analysis so everyone kind of understand the philosophy that's happening within the financial aid offices and our perspective. So may read the slide, make it a little bit boring, but just think it's really important for all of you to know these 4 principles. So to the extent they are able, parents have primary responsibility to pay for their dependent children's education. Students also have a responsibility to contribute to their educational costs. And then families should be evaluated in their present financial condition. And then also a family's ability to pay for educational costs must be evaluated in an equitable and consistent manner, recognizing that special circumstances can and do affect its ability to pay. Next slide, please. So I think it's really important to start that off so you kind of understand it's a team effort, it's a partnership as we're going and looking and paying for college. And so financial aid is a world of different terminology, and you're going to hear a lot of the lingo as you're going through the process, but I wanted to kind of give you some of those terms. So cost of attendance, you'll see COA. We like to use a lot of acronyms in the world of financial aid, as you will see, but this is your total cost of attendance. Jason talked about this a little bit. It's presented as a yearly figure. But I wanted to break down the cost of attendance to 2 components. There is a direct cost. So these are the items that you are typically billed by the university. So when you see, what do I owe? This is what you are billed by the university. So that is tuition, fees, housing, and meals. And then there also the other component is indirect expenses. So you may not be billed by the university, but we know these are items that it will take to live while you are at college. So you have to pay for books and supplies. Transportation was touched on. So we know you have to get to and from your university during breaks, and then miscellaneous expenses, which can your personal expenses. You have to take care of yourself while you're there, shampoo, soap, toothbrush, all that good stuff. But then also, it could also include insurance. Some schools will require you to pay for insurance and have a minimum requirement. So that's included in there as well. Expected family contribution, also known as the EFC, which a lot of you may be familiar with, and I know the FAFSA will be changing soon to what's called the SAI, Student Aid Index, but we are still waiting on more information so we can share that with everyone. But right now we use the EFC, and so this is how we determine what family resources. We use the family's financial resources to see what's available for them to help pay for school. And so this is used to determine your eligibility for financial aid. And then financial need, this is what we put all together. It's the difference between the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution. And this is your total eligibility from aid for all sources. Next slide, please. And this is just another way to look at it. I think it's nice to look at it in an equation format. and then to see how the tuition fees, book supplies, meals, and all come together to get that equation for cost of attendance. But then that expected family contribution, I want to break that down just a little bit. So it's looking at parents' contribution and the students' contribution from income, as well as both of their contributions from assets. So parents' total income, it includes all sources of income. So that could be wages from work, contributions that you make to retirement, health savings account, child support that may have received, in-kind support. So it's both taxable and non-taxable income. So when you see that, I want you just to look a little bit broader at income when we're talking about it. And then when it comes to assets, it will look at UGMA or UTMA accounts. They are counted. 529 plans are also included in that. This can also include equity in your home. It depends on which school you're applying to and which applications they are requiring. If your family owns businesses, this may be in there as well. Other real estate and then trust will be in there as well for assets. Next slide. And so how do you apply? So everyone's most likely familiar with the FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. Remember, it is free. It becomes available October 1st, and it's available at studentaid.gov. But this is where we collect your financial information. And so this is typically required for some state aid. It's like if you live in Georgia or Tennessee, we use this for like the HOPE scholarship. Your Pell Grant, Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, which is also referred to as SEOG, work study, and student loans. So this is looking just for federal aid. And some schools may use it as their application for their institutional aid, but you got to research each institution and know what they may require. Next slide. Completing the FAFSA, you go ahead and complete the student and parent FSA ID so you can sign electronically. You'll need your W-2 forms, federal tax returns. So for the upcoming year, we're going to be looking at 2021 information. Also collect all your investment information. When you're doing the FAFSA, really advise that you use that DRT, the data retrieval tool, where it pulls in that information directly from the IRS. There's a process called verification, and if you use this, this will kind of help cut down the time that you may have. You will receive a student aid report back, and that's called your SAR. And this will be a summary of the information that you provided, as well as should provide you with your expected family contribution. Next slide. So the CSS profile is the other application. Most of your private schools may ask for this particular form that may be required. And this is for your eligibility for institutional funds. So not funds from the government, but just from the institution. And so this is available at the CSS profile website. There is a fee for this particular application, $25 for the first one, and then additional report, $16. But there's good news, there's a waiver that may be available. So these three conditions that are listed here, you may be eligible if you had an SAT waiver, your income is $100,000 or less, or if you were considered to be an orphan award of the court under the age of 24. Next slide. And so the differences between the CSS profile and the FAFSA, the CSS profile allows us to give a cost of living adjustment when we're doing that need analysis. And so it may adjust for that parent calculation for your income, and it drills down to the zip code. So living in Manhattan, New York, if you made $100,000, is very different than you live in Manhattan, Kansas, $100,000. So it drills down to that zip code to kind of look at the cost of living and makes an adjustment there where the FAFSA does not. It also allows for non-custodial parent information to be collected, and that's optional for each school to determine a contribution for them. Then also there's a different methodology that's happening there. The CSS profile determines your financial need differently and takes into other factors, such as I talked about earlier, if you own a home or not, to be considered, where the FAFSA does not do that. And then also it assesses a minimum student contribution from the student. So that's like that work expectation we've talked about a little bit, and where the FAFSA does not do that. Next slide, please. So you can also check to see which school on that particular website too, as you're applying, to see if both need them or not. So what is the role of the financial aid office? So we take all this data, we pull it together, and we provide you with a financial aid offer. The one thing that's important, that every school awards differently. So no two schools typically are the same. And so you want to kind of do your research or check with schools to see what type of methodology they're using. So you may have schools that meet 100% demonstrated financial need with loans. Some may meet 100% demonstrated need without loans. So what does that mean? So when you get a financial aid package, you may or may not have loans there. Some other schools have a different methodology where they meet only a certain percentage of your financial need, and then there's other methodologies out there. So when you talk to schools, ask, how do you award your funds? What is your process? What are you looking at? Are loans included in your financial aid package? Are they not? How much will be the free money? Also, the financial aid offer will provide you with the school's cost of attendance, the types and amounts of aid offered. So if it's free money, loan, scholarship, work, student employment conditions. So typically if you're awarded student employment, you will have a number of hours that you can work. You may have an amount of money that you can earn. So it will give you those particular conditions. Also, terms and conditions of your offer. For financial aid, typically you can get up to a certain amount of years of financial aid. You have to have a minimum GPA, typically sometimes 2.0. If you get a merit scholarship, maybe 3.0. So we want to look at those conditions as well. If you have to attend school a little bit longer or you're not progressing at a certain pace, that can also impact your eligibility for financial aid. So you want to make sure that you are checking for those things as well. Also, we'll tell you about subject to availability of funds. Some funds are awarded first come, first serve. Sometimes the pot of money is a little bit smaller for some particular funds that may be available for institutions. So these are things that we take into consideration as we are making your financial aid package. We are looking at your eligibility from the federal side as well as an institutional side to put your financial aid award together. Next slide, please. One great tool that I really want to advise everyone to use is the net price calculator. Every college is required to have one. I will say not all of them are created equal, but they do have them. So this is a representation of how that particular school may award their financial aid. And so this will kind of give you an idea of your eligibility before you complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile applications if it is required. Estimate is only as good as information provided. So garbage in equals garbage out. So keep that in mind. You want to have your documents for that. So why is this helpful? If you're doing an early decision where it's binding, you want to make sure that you are financially able to attend that school. So we kind of give you an estimate. And then for regular decision, just kind of lets you know which schools you want to apply for and what you may be eligible for. One thing, keep your results. You want to make sure if your financial aid offer comes in differently, you can compare it to what you did with the net price calculator. And our last slide. So special circumstances, like Jason had talked about, get to know your financial aid office. We know that circumstances do come up. So when you receive that offer, take a deep breath. And then you always can pick up the phone and call us, because sometimes things have changed from the time that you provided us with your financial aid information. There may be a loss of job, separation or divorce in the family, one-time income. So someone may have taken a withdrawal from their retirement or won the lottery or won something one time income, or losses on the tax return. Because typically losses are not considered in our analysis. They are typically zeroed out for some institutions. But the main thing I want you to take away is reach out to the school if you have any questions or concerns. We are always willing to help and explain the process, and we are in this with you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Will, who's going to give us more information about scholarships.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chanell. So again, my name is Will Geiger. I'm the co-founder of scholarships360.org. Prior to my time at Scholarships 360, I worked as a school counselor at a high school in Connecticut. And prior to that, worked in the admissions office at Kenyon College, which is a small liberal arts college in Ohio. So excited to walk you through the outside scholarship process by digging into 5 common scholarship myths. Next slide. So one of the big myths I hear from students, and definitely remember working at Kenyon and the high school side, is just that students need to cast the widest net possible and just apply for as many scholarships and just really each day rack up the most number of scholarships that they can apply for. And I think that's a really big myth and a big mistake, just because so many scholarships are just designed to support very specific types of students. And I think this sort of scattershot approach results in applications that might not be really well tailored to you or your interests or your strengths. So my suggestion is to sort of start by looking at your own experiences, your interests, your background, your goals. The process can be something as simple as just jotting down anything that comes to mind in these categories. And this will just give you a really great immediate list of attributes that both describe you and could connect to different scholarship opportunities. I think that just a really thoughtful scholarship process where you're applying to opportunities that are really, really tailored and aligned to who you are is just going to be much more successful. I think there's running Scholarship 360. I know that one of the more common things that students are looking for are easy scholarships or no essay scholarships, which on one level sound really awesome just because you get to apply for opportunities without having to do a ton of work. And there's something that's kind of gratifying about just being able to apply for something in 2 seconds and then just, I applied for a scholarship. That's something I wanted to do. But the scholarships tend to have so many applications and tend to be more along the lines of sweepstakes that your chances of winning are just really, really slim. So I think that the more thoughtful approach of not casting a super wide net and applying for opportunities that are really well suited to you is just a better strategy. Next slide. Another common myth is that scholarships are only available to students who have straight A's or really high test scores. I think this is a big misconception that students have for a few reasons. Obviously, grades, test scores are really emphasized parts of the admissions process and absolutely do matter. But we forget there's thousands of different colleges in the country. And even at the college level, many schools have merit scholarship awards that are going to be open for students who are not straight A, 1600 on the SAT, 36 on the ACT type of students. So definitely to echo Chanell's point, checking in with your college, the colleges that are on your list about merit scholarship opportunities. Some colleges even have sort of automatic merit scholarships that are based off of a predictable framework. And some of them actually through the net price calculator, you might actually be able to get estimates for merit scholarships. And that is not going to be an official, not going to send you a check in the mail once you fill out the net price calculator. That will be contingent on being accepted to the college, making sure that all the information is correct. If you have a 3.5 GPA out of a 4.0, that might be very different than having a 3.5 GPA out of a scale that's 6 or 7 points or 10 points or whatever. So definitely don't count yourself out of the running, even if you're not a straight A student. And there's many other scholarships that are considering things outside of just grades and test scores. They're considering your background and your experiences and your talents. So if you're really passionate about environmental science or passionate about activism, or a particular, sports journalism, there probably are opportunities for you to showcase that side of who you are. And some of these applications, won't ask for a transcript. They might just ask you to sort of convey this passion through an essay or through your resume or through sharing experiences, via a short video or something creative. There's lots of different types of scholarships that will be a good fit for you, despite maybe not falling into a specific box. Next myth: scholarships with long applications are a complete waste of time. Going back to one of my first points about the no essay scholarships, this is sort of counterintuitive in that the scholarships, the really long applications, are going to definitely get less applications, which just makes them a little bit less competitive and gives you a better shot at standing out, just because a lot of students are deterred by scholarships with multiple stages and long applications and interviews and lots of specific other types of application criteria. So whenever I see scholarships with a long application, I always think just for the right student, that's going to be a really amazing opportunity, just because a lot of students are going to be put off by the long application. One caveat with this: definitely read all of the eligibility details and make sure that you are actually eligible for the scholarship. You don't want to read in the fine print that, oh, this is actually, you do 75% of the application and you read, oh, this is for students in one specific county in Ohio that you do not live in. So, do your due diligence, make sure you're reviewing the application carefully, but definitely lean into and embrace scholarships with long applications. Next slide. So this might seem very counterintuitive, as my business has been creating this online resource for scholarships, but I think that we live in such a digital age. For most students, like, you probably have grown up like doing most of your education, with like technology. That just seems very second nature. But online databases are sort of the obvious place where so many students are going. That one of the themes of this is, trying to find opportunities where there's less competition. The online, obvious scholarships are going to be the ones with a ton of competition. Doesn't mean you shouldn't apply, but scholarships are sort of a weird world where there are a lot of opportunities that are, a little bit more local. It might not be part of these online databases. Think local, community foundations, businesses, nonprofits, PTOs, PTAs, your local places of worship. My personal experience as a student, the scholarships that I won were not large national awards. They were small awards that were sponsored to support students in my local community. So, definitely, do research, talk to your school counselor, even, looking in like community flyers and community papers. Those are great places to, find scholarships that, may not even have, it's as like wild as this sounds, they might not have online applications. They might have, paper applications that you have to print out, fill out separately and print out and mail in. So, online is great, use it as a tool, but don't neglect some of the other sources of scholarships that might be available to you. And now let's get to the last myth, and that is that scholarships with smaller dollar amounts aren't worth it. I loved what Jason's portion of this this webinar, just talking about the smaller expenses of college. How debt can really, add up over time. If you, Google, a student loan debt calculator and just see how like, $5,000-$10,000 of debt, compounds over 10, 20 years. You'll, sort of realize that even, $500 scholarship, $1,000 scholarship is absolutely worth it, and is going to put a dent in your tuition bill. Going to eliminate if you need to take out student loans, it will mean you have to take out less student loans. I know that sometimes sort of hot topic has been around scholarship displacement. Just this idea that, outside scholarships are not worth it at all, just because they're going to be ultimately replaced in your financial aid package by the colleges, and it's going to net out. In some situations that can be true, but it's always important to check with the specific institution. I know at Kenyon College, where I worked, and at many other colleges, we would use outside scholarships at that time. I would double check to see. I haven't worked there in a few years, so if that's still the case, but we would use outside scholarships at that time to replace that self-help portion of the financial aid package that Chanell talked about. So for students who won, even a couple of $1,000s in outside scholarships, that would reduce their loan obligation, that might reduce work study. So it really did become a net positive for the students. So I think the idea of scholarship displacement is definitely real, but it is very nuanced, and you definitely want to check in with the college that you're going to be attending to see what their policy is and to see how that will impact you. Financial aid officers are really great. They're really helpful. So you should not be shy about reaching out. Those are the 5 scholarship myths. Now I'll pass it along to Ginger as we wrap things up.
Thank you. Well, we're going to get into some questions and answers with our terrific panelists. We've got several questions that have come in while we've been talking, and I know there are several more to come. So please feel free to pop those into the Q&A box. And we're going to pop into the chat a link to get in touch with our office. If there's a way that we can be helpful to you at Appleruth, we're always glad to be. One of my favorite stats is that our students earn on average 3 times as much in scholarship money as they spent on test prep with us. So increasing your standardized test scores is one of those surprisingly quick ways to create a lot of opportunities for some of those school-based scholarships that Will was talking about. And I was just doing the math in my head, and I have a freshman and a senior in high school, so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And my senior, who did do prep with Appleruth, earned actually 6 times what we spent on it at 3 different schools. So I'm a believer. So if we can help you, we'll be glad to. I want to open up the floor for questions and answers from our terrific panelists. We've got a lot of good questions here to talk about. And as a reminder, we recorded this conversation and you'll be able to view it and click through some of these things, the links, and some of the sort of acronyms that we talked about with the alphabet soup that Chanell was trying to translate for us, which was really helpful. We had a question early on about why a student wouldn't finish college in 4 years. So Jason, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about some of the ways in which life gets in the way for students.
Sure. There's lots of reasons why a student might not finish in 4 years. I will tell you my personal story why I didn't finish in 4 years, and that's because I had a lot of personal health problems that set me back. I actually, when I was going through these health issues, I actually went back. I went to part-time. I never quit school because I knew if I quit, then it was going to be too hard to start back. So what I did was I went to part-time, and then I just got behind. And then I actually went to school year round 3 years in a row. I went to summer school 3 consecutive summers so I could graduate in 5.5 years. That's how far behind I was. But that was my story. I got behind due to personal health issues. But other reasons, one of the big reasons that people get behind is that they get to, once you get like your senior year, and you've got a year to go. And what happens, I've seen this happen to so many of my peers in colleges. They'll need like 1 or 2 classes, or they'll miss a core class. This is what happened to me actually as well. There were some core classes that I missed that I didn't know that I needed until I went and met with the academic advisor, and I said, oh, you need to take these classes. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I had to. So I had to go back and take those. And I was lucky that those were available at the time that I needed them. But this is what happens to a lot of students is they might need 1 or 2 or 3 classes, and those aren't offered until a year. Like they might have to go 2 semesters before that class is offered, and they only need 1 or 2 classes. So this happens to a lot of students, more than you will actually believe. And it sets them back, and they'll literally like sit out a semester and then wait to the next semester, because you'll have to wait a whole year before that one class is offered again. And this is what's happening. So how do you prevent that? You meet with your academic advisor early on, like freshman, sophomore year, and make sure, and this is what I didn't do this, I didn't meet until I declared a major when I was probably a junior. Then I started meeting with an advisor to plan on, what classes do I need for my major, stuff like that. But this is what happens is you'll miss a class, like a core class or something, and you'll have to wait. So those are just a couple. There's probably lots of other reasons, why someone would get behind. But those are a couple of them.
For sure. I think everyone goes to college with the intention to cram 4 years into 4 years, but it doesn't always go according to plan. And I think that's, part of the advice that this group is sharing with you is, plan and then plan ahead, plan again, and have a plan for when your first plan doesn't work out. We've got several questions about parental contributions to their students' education with regard to taxable and non-taxable accounts and 401ks and retirement savings and things like that. Chanell, you get these questions all the time. So could you clarify a little bit about how retirement accounts are protected, to answer some of that? It's a lot of questions sort of on the same thing. So I'm going to let you talk about it for a little bit.
Yeah, no, thank you. So a lot of times if you have your retirement, and I like to say a bona fide retirement plan, so a 401k, 403b, in those particular areas, those funds are protected. They're not used to determine this contribution toward your students' expenses. However, what we do look at is the contribution that you make to your retirement plan. And so that's your untaxed portion. So usually this shows up on your W-2 statements, typically in the boxes 12A through 12D or E, I believe. And that's your contributions that you're making, and that can be considered as part of your income. So if it's in a bona fide retirement plan, it does not get considered. But if it's, let's say you say, oh, well, that's my investment. I reported $100,000 investments, but that is really my retirement. Well, we're going to count that as an asset because it's not in a retirement fund. So hopefully that clarifies that particular aspect of retirement.
It does. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always an important question. I think the line in our house was always, you can borrow for school, but not for your retirement. So we try to do a good job of protecting my parents' ability to retire while I also manage to go to college. So it's important to be thoughtful about those things for sure. We've got a question from an international student about going through the process of applying for need-based financial aid and merit scholarships and things like that. Will, I know you certainly had a lot of international students applying at Kenyon, and I know you've seen a lot of that, Chanell, as well. I don't know if either or both of you want to ring in on your advice for an international student who's looking to apply to US-based colleges.
Yeah, just on the note, I saw part of the question about our platform at Scholarships 360. We do have some resources for international students, but our platform is really designed just for US-based students. A lot of outside scholarships, you will unfortunately see stipulations that they have some residency requirements. Yeah, as far as merit scholarships, that will vary from college to college. Chanell can definitely speak to more of that.
Yeah, I was going to add that some schools do add need-based aid for international students. And so there may be a separate application other than the FAFSA. You can complete the CSS profile, or the institution may have their own application for need-based aid. A lot of times in those situations, they may be need aware in their admissions process. So that is something you want to look at as well. But typically eligible to apply for the school's merit scholarships also, or other avenues to fund for college.
Thank you. We've got a few questions from folks who are wondering if they need to fill out the FAFSA in order to access merit aid. So Chanell, I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that.
I will add that it depends on the school and it depends on their application process. So some schools may say complete the FAFSA, and that may be a part of your application process. Sometimes it's completely separate from need-based aid. So you have an application process for need-based aid and an application process for merit-based aid. So I can give you an example. For us at Vanderbilt, we do not require you to complete the FAFSA or CSS profile to be considered for merit scholarships, but there's separate applications for each of our merit scholarships. So every school is different. And I always say that first year, apply for everything and let the school tell you no. When you're going through that process, that's a sure way to make sure you haven't left any money on the table. So it just depends on the school and to look at what their requirements are for merit-based scholarships.
Thank you. It does also, I think it's worth mentioning about whether or not you indicate that you're applying for financial aid at the school. Will, I know we've talked a little bit before about schools that are need aware and need blind in the admissions process. So I wonder if you could talk about that terminology a little bit and the difference between, you can fill out a FAFSA and not tell anybody you're doing it as well. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So the term need blind means that financial aid will not be taken into account when the college is making admissions decisions. There's a handful of need blind institutions. That can vary. For transfer students, for international students, some that are need blind for everyone. Need aware, and we're at Kenyon College at that time. We were need aware, which means that we sometimes did take into account financial aid when making admissions decisions. Really, from the institution, the college's perspective, it was just about, we had a limited budget, and unfortunately, that meant that we had to make some tough decisions sometimes, as far as who we were able to admit, and making sure that we were able to not go over that budget. So that definitely can play a role as far as your admissions process and the common application. There's a question about checking the box. Do you apply for need-based, merit-based scholarships? You can also apply for the FAFSA separately. That's sort of a separate work stream. I think it's generally best to fill out the net price calculator, have a really good idea of whether you're going to qualify or not, and whether you're going to do that if you are concerned about being need aware impacting your admissions chances. I think that's also a conversation you have with your school counselor, with someone who might be able to advise you on admissions matters. It does get into that really gray area of it. It depends in the admissions process that I would have when I worked on this high school side of things, very long conversations with families about. So it really, that is it really does depend on the situation. Yeah, Chanel, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
Nothing to add there. No, that was good.
Thank you both. A couple of questions about whether or not it's worth it to apply for financial aid. And Jason, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how a family could go about budgeting for college, what their family expected contribution is versus what Chanell and company might say is their expected family contribution, or what the government thinks might be your expected family contribution.
That's kind of a tough question to put a concrete number on. It really just depends on the family, situation with the finances. I know for us, I have two boys, a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. And one of the first things we did was go and open them up each their own savings account. So any money that they get, we put, birthday, Christmas, holiday, whatever, we put that into their savings account in the hopes of them using that for college one day. So it just, I don't really have a concrete answer. I'll kind of defer to the others and see if they have any, as far as, each kind of family is different. I know for me, I'll just let you guys know, my parents, when I turned 15, my parents were you're on your own. You can work, you're legal age to work. They didn't pay for anything for me. So others are more fortunate. Their parents are much more, diligent about saving and opening savings and investing accounts for their children, which is really tremendous to see as well. So that's something that we want to do as well. And plan ahead for that as well. But I'll let the others chime in and on their responses.
I would just add that you do have to look at your budget initially. What are you able to pay versus what the expected family contribution? And just when you're applying to schools, that's why I think that net price calculator is really important initially. So you kind of have an idea of what you may be expected to pay. And if that fits into your budget as a family, and maybe need to look at different schools. Sometimes, with your state schools, the merit scholarships, I know Will kind of touched on, some of them are automatic based on testing or other accomplishments. So that may be a different route that you to look at different types of schools in that regard.
I'll just mention that I'm a big fan of doing an estimate. There used to be something magical called the FAFSA forecaster, and if you Google it, you'll still find it. Um, and it's FAFSA and then the number forecaster. And it will give you a pretty rough estimate of what the government thinks your expected family contribution would be. And then you can understand whether or not that's a reasonable number. It may not be a reasonable number because of some of the things Chanell talked about, right? It might be it uses your prior tax return, and your family's financial situation may have changed dramatically since then. I don't know if y'all heard, but there was a global pandemic and it had kind of a big impact for a lot of people. That may be something that you need to communicate, and that will be involved in an appeal, which you're allowed to do if the financial aid award doesn't work for your family's current situation. So I think it's great to kind of get a sense of what that number is. I think it's also really helpful to decide what the family scholarship is, which is to say, are you on your own, like Jason's parents did to him? Have you won the family scholarship, which is to say that your parents are planning to pay for college, but that usually comes with some strings attached, and it's really helpful to know what those are ahead of time. As Chanell mentioned, most scholarships come with, some expectations like GPA or what you can or can't major in, and things like that. So good to have those conversations upfront as a family, so you know what the expectations are around the table. And I think that's a good way to start. Okay, lightning round, because we're at the end of our hour. So if parents are divorced, who fills out the FAFSA?
Custodial parent. So the parent that they are living with majority of the time, if that is equal, then who is providing more of their support, financial support to you would list?
Thank you. Is community college first a great way to afford college and get a 4-year degree? Jason, just say yes.
Oh, yes. But I'll just say the caveat is just make sure that those credits are going to transfer to the college that you're going to go to. Community college can save you a tremendous amount of money. And I will tell you that all the people that I interviewed for my book regarding student loan debt, they came to me and they said, Jason, you know what? If I would have just gone to community college first, I would have half the student loan debt that I would have now. So yes, community college is a tremendous outlet, I guess, to save on potential debt or expenses. Just make sure the credits transfer to the college that you want to go to next.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Will, I love this question. Is there a limit to the number of scholarships a student can receive?
Only limit is just the cost of attendance. So if you win $1 million in scholarships, you're not going to be able to keep all of that. So it just goes up to the cost of attendance.
That's, I think, a great goal to have, right? To get to total cost of attendance. I am so grateful to our panel for sharing their experiences and their terrific insights with us tonight. I'm grateful to our audience for their engagement and some really terrific questions. We tried to cover as many topics as possible. And as I said before, if we can be of help to you at Appleruth, I hope you'll invite us to be part of your family's journey. You will receive a copy of this or the recording of this presentation later this week. And we look forward to seeing you at other webinars that we have, because we're all trying to just spread good ideas and information in this time to invite more students to find their way to and through higher education with success. So many thanks to Jason and Chanell and Will for sharing your time and expertise with us. Thank you all for being here, and have a great night.